This video is sponsored by Describe. Last week I made a video where I took you through the binder I put together in advance of my first Curse of Strahd campaign, and then you watched as I threw away basically everything inside because that binder had essentially been assembled in an act of hubris. Today we're going to take a look at some more notes of mine that are taking up way too much space, and we're going to purge the ones I don't need anymore. Some of these are for games or projects that I don't plan to work on anymore, or at the very least I don't plan to work on them anytime soon. Others might be projects that I do have plans for, but we'll have to assess whether this notebook is the best way of implementing those plans. And some of these might just be fun curiosities that can give you a peek inside my brain. And I suspect a lot of these are going to be replaced by digital tools. For example, some of these notebooks feature notes that I was taking that nowadays I would just do completely digitally. Likewise, if I had a notebook I planned to bring to a game, I would now give a lot of thought to what elements I actually need to put in my notebook and which ones I can just look up on my phone in the middle of a game or download onto my iPad or whatever. Because there are a lot of incredible digital tools out there, and I don't always need to jot them all down in an analog notebook. Just because it would be neat does not mean that it would be smarter than just using some of the digital tools available to all of us. Like, for example, the digital tools available through today's sponsor, Describe. Describe is a fantastic service where a team of any award-winning writers create dynamic descriptions for you to read aloud during your games. Not only that, but they have an incredible selection of maps with descriptions attached to each zone or landmark. So you don't have to worry about finding the perfect descriptions for the map you chose. You can choose a map through Describe and it comes with the descriptions baked in. Not only that, but they also have a collection of music that you can play in your games to help conjure the right atmosphere. I'm getting ready to run a one-shot for some friends soon, and I'm definitely going to be using the music from Describe to immerse my players into the game. And you can get all of this at a discount, because if you visit describe.com/supergeek and use the promo code SUPERGEEK, you can save 10% off of your first subscription payment. Once again, that's dscryb.com/supergeek and use the promo code SUPERGEEK. Thank you so much to Describe for sponsoring this video. So these are the notebooks in question. This is what we're reviewing today. Let's see if there's anything worth saving in any of these. Okay, first things first. This was a notebook that I used to bring to work, and it essentially featured the early stages of, I was going to write a novel about like D&D style characters, basically a D&D adventure in novel form, and I have two character names in here, one sentence of, I don't know if that was supposed to be the text, the prose. Oh, hold on. This was draft 2 of that one page. Okay, here's some world building that I actually would save, just because I like some of these names. I had an idea for basically this overarching plot that could be occurring in the background of novels, but that could also apply to adventures. And I like a lot of the names of some of these NPCs, and I think these are actually noteworthy. So I'm going to save this page. Here is an idea for some books that I'm never going to write, and that's okay. That's part of the process. And that's it. Okay. So we're going to save one page. And the rest of this can be tossed. You're going to probably be wondering why I'm tossing these notebooks instead of saving them. The basic answer is because I have so many notebooks that there is no point to saving any of them, and the longer answer has to do with my own sort of OCD feelings of, I don't like to use a notebook that had pages ripped out of it, and I don't want to save all these pages, and it's not worth saving all these notebooks, so I'm probably tossing a lot of them. I'm probably going to save a couple of them that I think are worth salvaging, but I don't need all of them. So some of them I'm going to throw away. These are hardback books. The problem with the hardback books is I always like them to feel like finished products when I'm working on them. And if I'm not in that state when I'm actually there working on it, then I just don't feel like it's salvageable. Unfortunately, it's the sunk cost fallacy. A lot of this is introduction that I was going to come back to and write, which already kind of tells you the problem, that I was sort of prioritizing so much of this as like, oh, this is sacred. This kind of like, I'm going to need a title page. I'm going to need a blank map. This is something that I was working on for Dungeon 24, basically. It was like Dungeon 23, but in 2024. And I was going to do this like open world style concept. And I am at some point going to work on this. I don't want to toss this out entirely necessarily, but I probably should, because I made it through like one not quite dungeon. I was still too zoomed out, unfortunately. I was rushing myself, was ultimately the problem. I don't think I work very well in the Dungeon 24 style and format, which is totally fine. Yeah, I think I'm probably going to pull out this note that I was using as reference, and I'm gonna not use the rest of this. For the same reason that I'm not saving the other stuff that's related to Dungeon 24, which we'll talk about when we get to it. Minor spoiler, it doesn't feel good to look at that notebook anymore, and we'll talk about that later on. Okay, next up we got another one. This one was lore, I believe. Yeah, I was developing some magic systems. There's some interesting ideas in here. And some lore I'm not as sold on. And oh yeah, I was developing a character. This was another one that was maybe going to be a character in like a work of fiction. Yeah, there's nothing really here worth saving outside of... I think this magic system is interesting, so I'm going to save this. I'm not going to worry about saving any of the rest of these NPCs, so that can go. This I am saving. This is my, like, notes and things I got done throughout 2023. I like to save these. I have my one from 2022 as well. They're a fun bit of, like, nostalgia and records. Maybe I'll purge them later on, but right now I do keep these. Okay, this was, like, rough notes for more, like, D&D dungeons and things. I was also maybe gonna do this for Dungeon 24. I never did, which is totally fine, but I had mapped out some possible, like, dungeons and adventures. I don't think I'm gonna save any of this. Yeah, this does not spark joy, we're gonna put it that way. There's nothing here that's really inspiring to me or compelling to me. So we are going to nix it. Okay, this one I probably am gonna save because it's just scratch paper, you know? I have ideas here that I'm not going to implement, but I don't feel as bound to that because this notebook is not meant to be this, like, impressive bullet journal style, like, finished product. These are just, like, notes that I didn't want to forget and that I wrote down. And some of these are for ideas for other stories or writing. This was like a setting that I was developing, which there's some potential there. I liked some of what I had there. These were notes for D&D games that I'm not going to run, but I can toss those out. I can actually get rid of some of these pages. Yeah, but otherwise there's some stuff in here that I need to transcribe and that I can purge, but I have a lot less reluctance about saving this notebook, so this one's probably going to hang around. Actually, once I purge those pages, there's not that much left of this notebook, so I just need to digitize a few things, and then this is probably going to go in the trash, just because there's only like 10 blank pages left. Okay, this is a Cobalt Soul notebook by the folks who make Critical Role, and I believe I was using this for Critical Role related notes. Yeah, so my thinking was I was going to go through... I was taking notes on the campaign setting of Exandria and Wildmount. I haven't made that video yet, but it's in the works. I realize that making that video ends up spoiling a lot of what is still to come in Campaign 1 of Critical Role, so I can't do that video yet until probably pretty late in the Critical Role Campaign 1 Demystified series. But the other thing that I was doing was taking the early steps toward maybe adapting some of the published adventures to take place in Exandria. I don't know that I don't take notes in this format anymore, in this notebook, for campaign settings. And I don't know that I'm going to do the adventures set in Exandria anytime soon. And if I do, I don't have any notes in here that I need to save, and I need to just get rid of some notebooks, so sorry, that one's going. Okay, this is where I get a little particular. I don't like the spacing of these lines. I didn't find this to be a particularly great notebook to use. I prefer the bullet journals that I threw away, but I don't want to save those bullet journals, and we'll talk about that a little more later. Oh, I know what this is. This is notes that my brother-in-law took when I ran a game for him. I'll save this. It's just scratch paper. I'm probably going to tear out the first page, but otherwise this still works. This, I think, is another brainstorming book. Yeah, this was brainstorming for that adventure. But I have other ripped out pages in this one. So even if I don't use it anymore going forward for that adventure, like if I don't run that adventure anymore, I can still use this notebook. And I feel a lot less precious about this one. And I can't really explain why. Maybe it is because it's a softback notebook. And maybe that's the only reason. And I've already ripped out pages and I'm able to keep using it. I will still use this as scratch paper and idea generation. This I purchased for Dungeon 23, actually, when that trend was going around. And this was basically the exact notebook that the originator of Dungeon 23, whose name I'm blanking on right now, used in his own blogs. And I made it through all of January, and that is it. And I didn't think there was anything particularly exciting here to save. This is an interesting exercise, but this particular format was not it for me. I did not like the really, really small pages. I think that's a really exciting challenge. It's not really how I work, but it was an interesting exercise, and it was fun to try. I would be interested in designing a mega dungeon in the future. Going into completely cold and not having a clear plan for it doesn't really jive with what I like to do in dungeon design. So I'm not going to save this or return to it, but I'm glad I tried it. This is more notes. Oh, this was like a companion book. Oh, this is actually important. There's some notes in here that I need to save. I really need to save. I've done some of these, which is good. This was notes that I was trying to keep track of some of my videos that I was working on, just in a different format. I don't keep track of them anymore, so I could tear out some of these pages. But I would save this notebook, and I will save this notebook. Yeah, there's a lot of this stuff that does not apply anymore, but I don't feel nearly as precious. So I probably will save this notebook, and just not much of what's inside. Although some of these are videos that I've wanted to do and really have not returned to. And this notebook is like a year old almost. So like 6 months old. So I need to get on some of these. I will get to it. I'll get to those things. I'll tear out some of these pages and then save the rest of this notebook for future use. Again, I think it's because it's softback. I feel a little more comfortable kind of treating this a little bit more roughly, I guess. Okay, this is kind of a middle ground one. I believe this was more notes. Yeah, these were more notes for the setting. No, D&D adventures. These were ideas for D&D adventures. I will save this for the time being. I may need to reassess this in the future, but for now it makes the cut. I've got like a map in here. This was meant to be like scratch paper and developing the idea, but I never really followed up on any of these, and I think that's kind of the problem. Is I don't think that I really do good brainstorming in bullet journal format. I like to have the final product here. Rough notes I can take on like lined notebooks, and final products I will happily ink down or print out and post into a bullet journal, but I don't feel like it's a good place for me to actually work on things. Generally speaking, that's I think what I've learned about myself about the bullet journal is I just get too precious about them. But there's some good ideas in here that I don't want to forget about, and I may incorporate into the new world that I'm working on. Yeah, we'll at least save some of these notes, and then we'll see. That one might get tossed out. This is one that I know I just use for scratch paper and brainstorming. It's a very flexible. This is an easy one to beat up. Also very convenient because it has a little pen holder right here. And I don't get at all precious about this. I can have notes and things in here that I can scratch out and scribble, and it works great for me. And I will probably return to keep using this again because it's actually useful. To say nothing of the fact that, like I said, there's a lot of stuff in here that I need to do that I have not done because it's been out of sight, out of mind. Like Patreon projects that were commissioned ages ago that I have not developed yet. Oh, cool. Okay, so some of this was in one of the notebooks that got thrown out. So those ideas are still in here. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. I'll save this, and I'm probably going to use this one a lot. This one I think is... So this is another Critical Role notebook that I think I got at like Barnes & Noble or something. And again, I just did not like how these lines were formatted. That being said, I have some notes in here about how to set up a start playing game. A game on startplaying.games, which I'm currently paused on working on until probably the next month or two, maybe later, because that's going to be around Halloween, and then that gets into the holidays. So we'll see if I actually have the time to run any games later this year. But, you know, once I do resume running games, whether it be later this year or February, at the very, very, very latest, there's some notes in here that I need to save. So I'm going to put this over on the desk and convert some of this digitally, and then I'm probably going to throw this notebook out because I just don't like using it. It's just that these lines are too big. The spacing is too big. It doesn't work with my style. So I'm going to toss this, but first I'm going to convert some stuff. This notebook is blank and empty. And again, huge big lines, and I have other notebooks that I'm saving. Okay. These are the two that I was kind of dreading. So, I love these notebooks. These are really gorgeous bullet journals that I really want to bring to a game and just be able to run a game right out of these notebooks and have like a whole world in this notebook. And then at the beginning of 2024, I was actually using this as my Dungeon 24 notebook. Actually, both of these, because the goal was this is the dungeon and then this is the overland region. And already I think the overland region was a little bit ambitious. I think I just was not quite happy with how that was entirely going, although there was some fun stuff in here. I had a cursed cemetery. I think that's about all I was able to put together. And I had a little bit of a wizard's tower. But this one I did a lot more work on. There were two problems as I was developing this. The first is, I actually was working on this on my baby moon. Like at the very, very beginning of January, I was on a cruise ship. And so I didn't always have like the time or energy to really put a lot of attention into this. So I really would just design the layout, and I really wasn't thinking about monsters or magic items or any of that. It was like, okay, I'm going to design the layout, and then later on, I'll go in and I'll add monsters, and I'll add distressed areas of damage and things like that. And I just think that's putting too much work off for later. As I talked about in my most recent video, if I put things off for later, I'm not going to end up doing them. I really need to make a clear plan for when I'm going to do something or do it in the moment. I can't do one or the other. The other problem was, as I got to like the 14th day, and right around then, I think a couple days later, I was a little bit behind, my grandpa died. And I just did not have any interest in returning to this book. And I know that you could always, when you're working on Dungeon 24 or Dungeon 23, you can take some time off and come back to it. I personally don't like that. I don't like having skipped days. It's kind of why the Dungeon 24 method maybe doesn't work for me, one of the reasons. But the other was, I just didn't want to look at these notebooks anymore. I now associate them with the project that I was working on when my grandpa and then my grandma died within like 2 weeks of each other. And I just didn't want to do them anymore. There's other reasons as well. This was going to be an idea for a D&D setting that I always knew was going to be a tricky sell to players. It was sort of designed to fill a very specific problem that I perceived, but I don't think it's one that my players actually had. It's more like, oh, I wish my players did X. I know what I'll do. I'll make a world where they have to do X. But there were always kind of issues with that, and maybe I'll talk about that some other day. Basically, how was I going to develop a world where it was okay if your players didn't know very much about the world? Very much a Fallout style. That was kind of the premise, is your characters are emerging into the world for the first time. This one is going into a mega dungeon, this one's going into the overland world. And maybe I'll talk about those ideas more in the future, but I always know that players always like to be exceptions, and they have their own ideas for characters, and that was going to be a really hard sell. But And I also have a new idea for a setting that I'm a little more excited about, and has a little more freedom and a little more potential for diverse atmospheres and areas and different places people can be from, and I'm really excited about that new setting. But also, I just don't want to look at these books anymore. And it really is as simple as that. There is no intellectual reason behind it. I just don't want to do these ones anymore. I will happily get another bullet journal and transcribe it and turn it into something kind of cool for an upcoming campaign, and I'll probably do a video about that. But it's not going to be these ones, because A, I didn't have a specific campaign I was running for this. This is just a dungeon that I was designing, and I don't really think, as much as the Dungeon 24 idea is a lot of fun, I prefer to have the finished product in some sort of document that I can print off or read online or something like that. So it's not maybe the approach that is best for me, and that's okay. But also, I just don't want to save these dungeons. So, and it's a bummer because those are really nice notebooks that I really wanted to do something fun with, and I thought, oh, this is the project. This is the project that I'm really going to... I actually had, fishing it out of the trash, one of these, I think the brown one, for years. Maybe not quite years, but like at least a year, waiting for the right adventure or campaign or whatever to use this, to turn it into, this is what I'm bringing to the table, and have all of my notes in here and everything. And then we got this one to be a companion, and maybe I'll do that again. I'd be very excited to. But this is not, these are not going to be saved. So, and it is a completely emotional reason, and I think that's okay. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this, and I hope it was entertaining and interesting. And if you liked the video, make sure to hit the like button so YouTube knows you liked it. If you want to see more of my videos, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you get to see a new video as soon as it comes out. The more people who watch a video as soon as it comes out, the better it does. So it is legitimately a huge help. What is also a huge help is subscribing to my Patreon. Everyone who signs up at literally any dollar amount, honestly, makes a big difference in my life. I would also love for you to join my Discord server. It's a really good group of cool people, and sign up for my mailing list to catch some other exciting updates I've got on the way. Make sure to register to vote and use vote.gov to do so. I guess there was a link shared by a certain billionaire who owns a certain social media website, and the link appeared to be voter registration, but actually just harvested data and didn't register you, and that seems bad and maybe illegal. So use vote.gov, and just a general reminder, be diligent. It's going to be a long couple months. There's going to be a lot of misinformation out there. Click here to watch my video about building Caleb Widowgast from Critical Role as a Pathfinder character. And until next time, play fair and have fun.